The purpose of the following video is to provide the viewer with an insight into some of England's medieval kings, from William the Conqueror to King John. I have provided a quote from different medieval chroniclers for each king. The quotes vary on what they discuss. For example, for William I, we look at a quote from William of Malmesbury, who is used several times in this video. William of Malmesbury discusses the conqueror's obsession with money. For William II, also using William of Malmesbury, we look at the king's physical appearance. I hope the video gives an insight into these remarkable kings. To scrape together money, William the Conqueror cared not how he would get it. He sought all opportunities to gain money. He would say and do almost anything, unbecoming such great majesty, where the hope of money allured him. For dread of his enemies, William would drain the country of money in order to repel his enemies' attacks. That quote was taken from William of Malmesbury. And William is certainly not exaggerating when he says William the Conqueror feared English rebellions against his rule. The Norman king built literally hundreds of Motte and Bailey castles across England in order to bring the country fully under his command. William Rufus was well set, his complexion florid, his hair yellow, of open countenance, different coloured eyes, varying with certain glittering specks. He was of astonishing strength, though not very tall, and his belly rather projecting. Quote taken from William of Malmesbury. Whilst William II is a rather forgettable monarch, he certainly had an interesting physical appearance. Henry passed his early years in pursuit of the liberal arts, and so thoroughly imbibed the sweets of learning that no warlike commotions, no pressure of business could ever erase them from his noble mind, although he never read much openly, nor displayed his attainments except sparingly. His learning, though obtained by small snatches, aided him in the science of governing. Henry I was the youngest of the four sons of William the Conqueror, and his interest in learning is indicative of the fact he probably never expected to be king. Although one of his brothers died when Henry was only a toddler, his other brothers, Robert and William, were still ahead of him in the pecking order. However, circumstances could change rapidly in the Middle Ages, and so that proved for Henry. Stephen was a man of activity, but imprudent, strenuous of war, of great mind in attempting works of difficulty, mild and compassionate to his enemies, and affable. Whilst these words, written by William of Malmesbury, may look fairly flattering, the reality was that King Stephen was a weak man and a terrible king. What made his reign all the worse is that he was not the rightful monarch. The crown should have been that of his cousin, the Empress Matilda, and so his reign was described as being a time when Christ and his angels slept. In these early days of his reign, Henry II paid due regard to public order and was at great pains to revive the vigour of the laws in England, which had seemed under King Stephen to be dead and buried. As this quote from William of Newburgh gives a small indication of, Henry was a proactive and energetic young man at the time of his succession. He was exactly what the country needed after decades of turmoil and civil war. Since Richard had resisted his father, Henry II, and had done much to stir up the French factions that were hostile to the Normans, he had earned the disapproval of good and wise men. Now, as king, Richard sought to make up for all his past excesses by doing all he could to show honour to his mother, Eleanor of Aquitaine. Richard hoped that his obedience to his mother would atone for his offences against his father. Quote from Ralph of Dissito. Whilst Ralph's comments make for a nice story, it's doubtful that Richard changed his behaviour towards his mother Eleanor in any particular way. He was her favourite of the four sons that Eleanor had with Henry II, who survived into adulthood anyway. And the first thing that Richard did as king was to release Eleanor from the 15-year-long captivity Henry had sentenced her to for her role in Richard's and his brothers' rebellions. When John came to Sleaford, which he had taken from the Bishop of Lincoln during the war, his illness grew worse, and he was carried on a litter to Newark, another castle of the Bishop of Lincoln, but which the king had taken possession of some time ago. Here, laid low by illness, he died on the 19th of October 1216. Quote Ralph of Coggeshall. Those words describe John's final moments. He was a desperate man on the run from his own subjects. John had been a selfish, greedy, at times cruel, and often incompetent king. His death would have come as a relief to many, although the trouble in England was not over yet. So bad had John's reign been that there was a foreign prince in the country trying to take the English crown, and John's death didn't deter that prince from continuing his quest.